Hey guys, it's Miko from M1 Sound Lab, and today we'll be comparing all of the best AI amp capturing platforms of 2025. Okay, before we dive into it, I want to make it clear that this took a long time to get done, so if you like this kind of content, please subscribe. Also, this has a lot to do with our current new release, which is called the Capture Packs. And our very first capture pack is called the Essentials Capture Pack. And all of these amplifiers we'll be comparing today are actually part of this capture pack. So if you like these tones, go get the pack. On this platform we have the Quad Cortex, which you can see here in the table. We have the Kemper Mark II, we have TONEX, and we also have the free neural amp modeler, the NAM platform. Now this is the huge Cubase session that I have going on. I used 3 different guitars. We have a Stratocaster in here, we have a Les Paul, and then we have a long range baritone guitar. And all of these guitars have been reamped through real amplifiers, which will be in red in all of these comparisons. Then we have the neural amp modeler, the free platform will be in teal. TONEX will be in orange. Neural DSP, Quad Cortex, Nano Cortex, it's going to be purple, and Kemper will be green as it is. And a tiny detail to note is that all of these clips are actually done without the cabinets on these platforms. So for these demonstrations, I will be using the same cabinet modeling for all of these clips, which will be the free Miko Reflex. So get the free Miko Reflex if you like these sounds, because it's free. It's free! Now let's start with the Recto. This is the real Recto with my Stratocaster. And this is it with NAM, the neural amp modeler, free platform. TONEX. Neural DSP. And the Kemper. Now, listening to them back to back like this, you don't necessarily hear a huge difference, which goes to show that these all do a pretty good job. However, when you flip back and forth between them in here, you will start to notice some differences. Let's jump to the Les Paul track, where I'm playing kind of like a Guns N' Roses type riff. So, flipping back and forth between these, you will start to hear some bigger differences. Real amplifier. So that makes it very clear that I think NAM, TONEX, and Neural, they really pass as real amplifiers. The Kemper, the high end just is very muffled to me. Now let's listen to the extended range baritone Djent version of this comparison. Now once again, the only thing that really jumps out to me here is the Kemper. Once again, 15-year-old tech. Now there's a big reason why it's very important that it's me actually making this comparison, and the big reason is that I actually run a plugin company and I've been modeling real amplifiers for over 5 years. The strength there is that I have a very good understanding where the problem areas really are for modeling, and really the problem areas are in the ultra low end, in the ultra high end, and many times the pick attack and dynamic range. Those are the things that really come to mind, and a very good test for this will be the palm mute a bit here in the extended range. So the palm mute of your guitar is something that will definitely show off the weaknesses in amp modeling. So to really emphasize the differences, we're actually going to be looking at these through a curve, and I'm going to be using this free plugin called the Voxengo Gliss EQ. This is going to be NAMM versus real amplifier. Real amplifier is red, NAMM will be teal. Now, something very good to understand here is that the frequencies are the same. This is very good. Maybe low mids, tiny bit off, ultra high end, tiny bit off, but these are very subtle things. Now let's jump to the TONEX. For TONEX, similar thing. Ultra high end, maybe a tiny bit even worse than it was for NAMM. The frequencies, however, are the same. Low mids, tiny bit different. But once again, this is very good. This is extremely good. Now, when doing this with the Neural DSP Quad Cortex that I have here on the table, we get something else. Let's have a listen. So let's first of all listen to these. So this is the Quad Cortex. And this is the real amp. Neural DSP. They actually sound really close to each other. Now, something important to understand here is that with real amplifiers, many times the high end and the low end aren't really coming at you at the same time. So when you're doing a palm mute on a Recto, like we are doing right here, with the real amplifier, when you do a palm mute, you actually hear the high end click first, and then you hear the low end. So to demonstrate this, it's gonna be like chipoom, chipoom. Sorry for that demonstration. Right here, you can see that the Quad Cortex low end is in rhythm with the low end of the real amplifier, but the high end is not. Actually, if you just turn off the real amplifier and look at this, the low end and the high end are sort of arriving almost at the same time with the neural, while with the real amplifier, there's a clear kind of latency between the high end. Like I said, high end, then you hear the low end, like chicoom. This really is important because this allows you to hear your jug. Even though the amplifier has a huge low end, like the Recto does, you can hear the jug really clearly without hearing the low end covering it. So you hear the jug well, and then you hear the low end oomph. So that is kind of a small thing, but it's a thing. Let's compare the Kemper. This will be bad. Sorry, but let's compare. So this is the Kemper versus the real amplifier. Let's just have a listen to them separately. So Kemper, real amp. Kemper, real amp. Now when I layer these on top of each other, all sorts of things are wrong. First of all, the Kemper low end always was strange for me personally. They have a lot of this sub low, which the real amplifiers do not have. The amount of low end is off. The mid-range is balanced quite well, but like I said before, even just listening to the samples that we listened to before, there's a frequency roll-off on the Kemper. And if you notice, around 10K, 11K, there are these nasty spikes here. If we just turn off the real amplifier, you can see it better. There are these nasty spikes in the high end. And when I was doing this, I thought it was something to do with my capturing methods. But I checked all other super high gain captures and all of them have something weird happening around this 11K area. Now, why are we getting these spikes around 11K? I think it has to do with their sample rate being 44K. If you understand the math behind that, if you divide 44K by 2, it's 22K. If you divide that by 2, it's going to be 11K. Likely has something to do with their sample rate being 44K on the Kemper. and their capturing methods. But yeah, that is something that is also a part of all captures in there. It's not really a problem because once you look at these graphs, we're talking about 11K, but when you have a cabinet on this, you're regularly going to be having a frequency roll-off way before 10K. So you're not going to be hearing this that well, but it's still there. It annoys me a little bit, and there's nothing you can do to get rid of that. It just is there. However, that is still 15-year-old tech, and I think I did a very good job. As you can actually tell, because I have a preset loaded up in here, we have the Mars 800. Even after doing the profiling with the Kemper, and then even after that, doing the refining process, and I did a long refining process for all of these captures, I still had to tweak the EQ. So we've actually, for this Mars 800, we've boosted the bass quite a bit, lowered the treble, and added a little bit more presence to make this sound more like the real amplifier. So I don't like that perspective of using the Kemper where I kind of have to manually try and make it sound more like the real thing. In an ideal world, it would just sound exactly like the real thing. There's a little bit of that with the Quad Cortex as well, because let's face it, the Mars 800 is a demanding amplifier. It requires these modelers to understand the difference between preamp gain and power amp gain. And I feel like many times when you're going to these power amp gain amplifiers like the 800 or a Plexi or something, that is where the Kemper starts to struggle. That is where they really have problems. Maybe with the Quad Cortex, I think for this capture I also had to actually fine-tune the gain a little bit for this capture, and I think I've also lowered the treble 2 dB, mids 1 dB. It wasn't too far off, but I just wanted it to sound as close as possible to the real amplifier. So there's like 3 captures in this Essentials pack for the Quad Cortex where I actually had to go in and dive and do some tweaks to these amplifiers, but most of them were actually very good. For example, the Recto that we're listening to here doesn't have any of that tweaking going on. It's exactly the way it got captured. Let's compare the other amplifiers because that's where we find more. So that was just the Recto. Let's go through the 800, and this is the real 800. And let's go once again to the Stratocaster. This will be the difference between NAMM and the real Mars 800. Identical, like that curve was layered right on top of the real amplifier throughout the time. Same for TONEX. The thing with TONEX is actually that they also have a frequency roll-off, and they actually had a very bad frequency roll-off in the V1, very similar actually to Kemper. But this is actually the V2 capturing for TONEX, and they fixed it. So right now we actually have the frequency roll-off starting around 15, 16K. It's no longer a problem at all, but you can you can see it there. That is the difference. Once again, it's layered perfectly on top of the real amplifier, so I would give this and NAMM 10 out of 10. Now how about Neural and the real 800. So there's actually a little bit of volume difference here, which makes it look a little bit different, but you can actually see that because I had to do some gain adjustments for the capture, we're actually getting a little bit more of this ultra high end on the Quad Cortex, but it was a big part of getting the realism correctly. Now if you were to do this with the Strats, it's less obvious. And if you were to do this with the low tuned guitar, it's even less obvious. Now let's compare the Kemper and the real amplifier. So as you can tell, they actually do sound quite similar, but once again, we have that frequency roll off on the Kemper, and it's got that nasty spiky thing going on around 11K. And that frequency roll off, really, like I said, it's not an important frequency for guitars. You just don't have anything way in the top, and really good amp modeling, in my opinion, would really, truthfully, show you this high end going as far as possible to keep the fidelity really high. So this is kind of a problem area for Kemper once again. On to one of the most difficult things for modelers to get correctly, even for capturing, and that is low gain. That is the tiny sizzle, harmonic, subtle sizzle saturation on top of a clean sound. And this is where I don't know what's up with Kemper, but they don't understand any of it. We're actually using the F-Man Plexi, so that is the clean channel on the BE100 Deluxe. And this is what the real amplifier actually sounds like. Let's go to the Strat comparison once again. So this is the real amp starting with it. It's not that clear here with the Strat, but it's very clear with the Les Paul. So let's have a listen to the Les Paul track. Starting off with the real amplifier again. So yeah, you can definitely tell that there's not the same amount of gain on the Kemper, and there's nothing you can do about it. How about NAMM? NAMM sounds exactly the same. How about TONEX? TONEX V2 sounds exactly the same. How about Neural? So unsurprisingly, the Quad Cortex also understands low gain really well. So if I were to grade these different platforms, I think I would give a 10 out of 10 to NAMM. Obviously we are using a NAMM based modeling system for our amp modeling, so I would say that, but you know, I think I proved it here. NAMM was capable of accurately modeling low gain, accurately modeling high gain palm mutes, and it was identical to the real amplifier in this very unforgiving EQ curve comparison. Same goes for TONEX. TONEX and NAMM, they are very close, especially with TONEX V2. They are very close to each other now. Neural DSP, neural capture, there were some things that weren't as good as they are on TONEX and NAMM, so I can't really give it a 10 out of 10. But I actually do think that it's very good, and the user friendliness of doing neural capture is much better than doing TONEX and especially doing NAMM. So for that reason, I'll give the Neural DSP a 9 out of 10. I don't know anything about the capturing tech, so no secret information here. But if they do it in a similar way as the Kemper does, that might explain why some of these problem areas are there. I'm not sure if you knew this, but let's spill the beans. The Kemper profiler, I think secret information or not, has amp models in it, and it's sending these test signals to kind of morph these amp models to sound more like your amplifier. So you're sort of using like a gain matching and EQ matching system on top of existing amp models. I'm thinking maybe Quad Cortex might have a similar thing going on, because they're not really sending real guitar playing through the amplifiers, but just noise and test signals like that. So I think based on the tests that I've done with NAMM and all the different stages that I've gone through, I really can't get realistic AI captures if I'm not sending also real guitar playing through these amplifiers. I just can't get it. But once again, I understand that these are very different kinds of machine learning protocols, the NAMM system and the Quad Cortex. So this is just speculation. I don't know. Don't quote me on this. Now, when it comes to the Kemper, let's just honestly say that I'm just waiting for the Mark II version of modeling and profiling to come on this platform. I was actually hoping that it would have been out before this pack came out, so I would have been using that. It does an okay job, and it's still the industry standard in so many different platforms, but let's be honest, it's the worst one out of the bunch. To grade this, I would give it, 6 or 7 out of 10, and that is only because I have some respect that they did this 15 years ago. But let's be honest, it's not at the level of the Quad Cortex, it's not at the level of TONEX or NAMM. Thank you for watching this video. Once again, if you like these tones that you heard here, we just released the Essentials Capture Pack, which includes 9 of my best amplifiers in my collection, and these captures were done with real cabinets. Also, it comes with 9 amazing impulse responses that perfectly match these amplifiers. So if you get this pack, you get the most realistic tones out of your modeler. Thank you for watching this video. I've been Mikko from Emo Sound Lab, and stay tuned for more. Bye bye.